And this is Off the Ball Saturday on News Talk. John Duggan with you through until 5. You can text us 53106. We're streaming the conversation as well. So listen on News Talk and also watch us on the digital and social channels for Off the Ball, for Periscope on Twitter, at Off the Ball, YouTube, Facebook, and on the OTB SPORTS app. Just let you know, in the Premier League, Leicester 0, Arsenal 2. This is the Saturday panel until 2:30. We're going to review the sporting week now between then and 2:35 with the soccer correspondent of the Irish Times, Gavin Cummiskey. You're in studio, Gavin.
How are you?
Your first time?
First time ever, yeah. This is my debut.
Yeah, it's a beautiful place and this magical world that we have here. And also on the line we've got Cliona Foley, presenter of Off the Bench and journalist, and the former Irish basketball team captain and coach Timmy McCarthy. Cliona and Timmy, are you well?
Great. We're bringing you I'm hoping there'll be no Halloween horrors here.
No trick-or-treating on today's show.
John, looking forward to the chat, looking forward to this.
As always, folks. I think we're going to start with a feel-good story of the week, folks. The win for the Irish women's soccer team in Helsinki in Finland, 2-1. I feel there's something really growing here. I think we've moved to accountability stage now, that it's just not all about, oh, that's interesting. It's actually about results, and I think Vera Pauw proved herself in that regard the other day. There was a resilience there for Denise O'Sullivan to get that winning goal just after we conceded. There's an excitement about the team. Gavin, you were there, and I feel it might not be that long before this becomes an Aviva Stadium team.
I was actually trying to report on that this week, and I was speaking to them, and the FAI were quite interested about it, that their goal is they need to start packing out, probably for this qualifying campaign, certainly for the next 2 games. They need to be guaranteed that they can get 8,000. That's step one, because 50,000 is a big leap. Unless they can get the entire lower deck of the Aviva, it's a huge cost to go there. I suspect from the games I've been going to that there is a growing demand that we don't know about, because just the interest of young teenage girls down is everywhere I look at the moment. Now I have nieces, but it's really evident. So I think the next qualifying campaign, or maybe a special friendly against a Brazil or something like that, but it could be the last next year, the qualifying, the last matches to qualify for this World Cup, if Ireland's still in the running for the playoff, or even if they get a result in Sweden. The switch to the Aviva would be special for starters, and I hope it happens. I think it'll definitely happen in the next qualifying campaign, if not by the end of this one.
There's a real marketing opportunity here, isn't there, Cliona, for this brand, which is very sparkling at the moment, for people like Katie McCabe to get into communities, for them to be known, for them to be on billboards, and for people to identify them with them as just as much as they would with camogie players, ladies football players and Gaelic football players.
Yeah, our football players of either gender. I mean, as Katie McCabe, as we know at this stage, is an absolute superstar, and so is Denise O'Sullivan in their leagues. They're amongst the best in the world. It's really interesting, John. Like it's no coincidence, I think, that they've picked up Sky as a sponsor. That's really interesting, to see a company like that with that kind of reach come in and sponsor them. And I think, it isn't just that results against Finland. I actually thought their game against Sweden was a really good result. And I was at the Australian game as well, which I know was a friendly, but even still, they are building momentum. They've got themselves sorted. Thing about them at the moment actually is the performance of new players. And that's what interested me, was Pauw going to bring in new players, and how was she going to develop? McCarthy, who's playing with Galway United, played in Scotland, is doing really well in defence at the moment, because there are absentees through injuries. It's really interesting to see how she's developed, how Heather Payne has developed up front. Again, homegrown Roscommon player, now playing in FSU in Florida State in America. So I think that what's really interesting to me is the development of players, how organised the team is getting, and where they're going to go from here. Look, they should be winning their next 2 games, and we've got 2 home games in November, which is great to see. And it's an interesting point as well. Your point about, is it time to get more people to those games, or to give people the opportunity to go? And I liken that in some ways, but they're not on the same level of performance at all at the moment to the women's rugby team, who are now going to get their first autumn internationals in the RDS. There's going to be an opportunity for more people to go and see live games, and I think that always helps. That helps people to understand how good people are. You don't quite ever see it on television, I think.
If we qualified, Timmy, for Australia and New Zealand, just imagine the country getting up early in the morning to watch the team in their first World Cup. It would be a big game changer. And I just really hope they don't mess up now, these 2 matches against Slovakia and Georgia, to keep the momentum going and get that playoff spot.
It would be really game changer, because first of all, we're great at following international teams, especially teams that qualify for big competitions, be it male or female. So I think what is important to understand, though, is we've won 1 game out of 2. We just, and Cliona said we have 2 very big games coming up now, and we need to keep the momentum going. It'll be amazing to qualify. I also agree with Gavin, if we could fill the Tallaght Stadium first and have that rocking and rolling for the rest of these games. The Aviva Stadium could be the next qualifying campaign, but it'll be amazing to see an Irish women's team in the World Cup campaign finals. I also think that the coach has done an amazing job. I think that she came in with a big reputation, and we are now seeing the benefits of the reputation. She's implementing her style. She's mixing the old and the new as regards the players. And I was very impressed the other night in how they came back, because they got a brilliant goal to start, and then obviously Finland responded, and we just hung in there. And I think that's a slight difference in what I've seen in women's football at international level from Ireland as in previous campaigns.
What are the nuances that you saw in Helsinki that...
I think Vera Pugh can stand over her results. She's doing a good job, but I have to say I feel like since the Australian game it's been extremely player driven. I don't think this team's going to get beaten easily anymore, because their philosophy, above all else, above tactical stuff and all, is we will outwork, we will outrun every team we play against. They did that to Sweden. They definitely did it against Finland. Heather Payne is the shining light above all of this. She's 21. It's not unlike what Adamita's experienced, where her performances in green are going to get her a long career in this game. When she leaves Florida State, she will be picked up by the WSL team, or she'll be picked up in America by one of the top clubs like NC Courage, where Denise O'Sullivan is and all that, because John Fallon actually said it in the Examiner, she became a star in the last few weeks. And the poor thing is, because she's a lone striker, she's probably not going to get many goal chances, but her work ethic her levels of athleticism were just off the charts, that was one thing I noticed. I really feel though that it was the attitude of, like, Katie McCabe sat down and chatted to me and Dave Kelly from the Indo just about half an hour after the game. She covered in ice packs and she sat down, she spent a bit of time with us, and that's another thing that they do. They've no problem doing that, like talking about...
There's no shield.
There is, but they're happy to break it down and sit down and talk to you. They give you the benefit of the doubt that you're going to take their quotes the right way and all that, and they're open. They're not naive. She just knows that she's the spokesperson for this team, no one else. And we talked about how it was really frustrating watching her in that rigid, essentially left back when Ireland are against teams that have more possession than them. And Katie McCabe at left back is just not what you want to see, because she's such a natural attacking gifted player. She said, but then you saw at the end of the game in the last 10-15 minutes when she broke out, and she really should have scored twice. She had two good chances and she flashed them wide. And we were like, how did that happen? How did you get out of such a rigid system? And she goes, she hears Louise Quinn behind her, give her the call. So they are extremely tactically aware on the pitch. Like, Louise Quinn realised that if we are backs to the wall with 5 defenders for this game, we're not going to hold out, And she cut Katie McCabe, so she lets Louise, she's the captain on the pitch, but she lets Louise kind of lead her, and all that kind of stuff just really impressed me, And it tells me that I don't think we're going to see the mistakes and the errors that we saw against Ukraine in the last campaign. That it's going to be a bit miserable next summer watching them not at the Euros for them. And losing Eileen Gleeson as an assistant coach is another thing that they're going to really miss. But I feel like this team are happy to control the controllables. You know what I mean? They're not going to let like kinks of unluckiness or bad luck deny them what they actually deserve. That's what's overwhelming at the moment in their attitude. They're just going to go out and they grab games, which is very rare from an Irish team in any male, female over the years,
Well, let's hope it continues, Gavin, next month. Stephen Kenny's 50 today. Happy birthday, Stephen. And there's a set-out for the Portugal game next month, and there's obviously a bit of controversy in the news this week about the timing of anti-ticket tout legislation with online sales of Ireland-Portugal tickets way above face value. Pretty disgusting practice, and obviously the legislation's coming in. Timmy, the sellout, is it Stephen Kenny? Is it people just starved to go to a game? Is it the Ronaldo factor? What do you think it is?
It could be a combination of all three, but I do believe that the way Kenny's playing, the style of football, is being appreciated. We haven't got the best results. Let's be very clear. We're not going to qualify this time around, but there is a progression. So that's definitely a factor. People have been starved of live sport, particularly in soccer, from the point of view of crowds. So that's another factor. And look, Ronaldo, has shown us how to break a heart, but there's a big Man United following in Ireland. So those three factors combined which I think is brilliant, to see an Irish team in the Aviva with a sold-out attendance would be tremendous, irrespective of the results. Once we get a good performance and keep progressing, I just think it's a great night to look forward to.
The moral question over ticket touting, obviously, I think there's general agreement that selling is distasteful and now going to be illegal. Buying, anybody who pays over the odds for a ticket, Timmy, is it morally wrong?
Well, it depends, I suppose, on the financial position of the person buying it. You know, I mean, you can't have touts unless you're somebody willing to pay for it in that sense, right? But if you want to bring your son to a game and you have to pay over the odds, you say it's a chance for him to see Ireland playing, a chance for him to see Ronaldo. Some people will do that. I personally believe we should have face value, and it should be face value only. And I can remember standing outside Croke Park on occasions, and at one occasion I had tickets for the Tyrone Armagh game, and I met a family, and I had 4 tickets, and I gave them the tickets and said, look, just enjoy the match, and didn't charge them anything, because I just felt that, it didn't make a difference to me, it was the 60 quid each, at the point in time was what really material. What was material was that I got this great pleasure of seeing the smile on that family of 4. So I'm against ticket touting, let's be very clear. But I do believe, and I do see why sometimes people will pay over the odds to get it. But the good thing is, it will eventually be illegal, and that legislation should be brought in quicker. We shouldn't be sitting on the fence on that one.
Morally wrong to buy a ticket over the odds, Cliona?
I don't know. I don't think so. In terms of, I've never done it, and I wouldn't do it. I'd be the same as Timmy. And if I had a ticket, I'd sell it to somebody at the same value. And the reality is now there are very few tickets actually come up at that old thing of walking up to matches and getting somebody selling them, even for GA. They're very, very rare. But, if you have got, kids or, a relative or a friend who's come home from somewhere and, is desperate to see a match or whatever, I just think, there's lots of moral decisions you make in life far more serious. There are always going to be ticket touts. That's the reality. And I'd be amazed to see how legislation will stop it, because I think, and then you also have you have all kinds of complications, even with rugby tickets and things like that, where clubs make money off rugby international rugby tickets and raffle them within their own clubs to make money. It's a complicated area, but I wouldn't judge anyone too harshly for it, I have to say.
Yeah, I'd never like when I see All Ireland tickets going on sale on websites for inflated prices. But then again, you go abroad, you've spent a lot of money to go abroad, you might not be able to get a ticket for a big game, and maybe you pay over the odds and you don't feel too bad about it. Gavin, do you have a moral stance on this? Or
No, of course not. When's the black market not existed? I remember my dad was able to get me Croke Park tickets for the Doves when I was younger, and he was able to get rugby tickets. But for football tickets, he definitely probably would have bought off touts, because he wanted to bring an 8-year-old to see the Republic of Ireland playing in the qualifying for, it was your Italy 90, What am I going to do, say my father's morally wrong because of that? Of course not. I thought Henry McKean did a very good thing. He interviewed touts, was it in Japan a couple of years ago, on News Talk. He did a very good, he brought a bit of humanity to the tout, showed them that they're a person who, that's what they've always done. It's a profession to them, It's a black market profession. Look, the Sale of Ticket Act is in, and it was the Indo got a good news story out of it this week. But I thought what I saw was we live in this culture of blame, especially from our political classes, and instead of taking responsibility, the FAI and the government were at fault for not nipping this in the bud. The Act's been in place since July, I believe. But people were too quick, let's point the finger. And then straight away, once the government pointed the finger at the FAI said, oh, well, we have to try and fix this. And then Sinn Féin pointed the finger at the government. I think it might have been the
venue that needed to get its house in order. I think it was the Aviva Stadium.
Lots of people made mistakes. And instead of people taking responsibility of those mistakes, we had what we've been getting swirling around Irish life for a long time is finger pointing. So, look, it happens. Have you ever, in your entire life, not seen ticket touting around big matches?
Well, I was in for the World Cup final in Brazil, and all the ticket touts are getting arrested by the police.
Well, selling tickets in Brazil was pretty dangerous.
It was too dangerous for us to spend the $5,000 each, myself and my friend, that we had in our pockets at the time. So look, we didn't want to
end up in prison in Brazil.
We didn't want to end up in Bangu prison, like other people have in the past. So look, I bought a World Cup ticket off a ticket tout in 2006 for face value, because probably it was the worst game of all time, Switzerland-Ukraine. So I don't think these things are necessarily black and white. I think selling is definitely obviously much more distasteful than buying. But I don't think it's something that you bring out you flog people for. I just think it's part of life and part of society, and it always will be, I think.
They are addressing it though, but this week was a bit of a stain on the whole situation. But it's Ireland-Portugal. This team's playing well again. Stephen Kenny, again, happy birthday to him. Instead of calling him the 49-year-old Dubliner, we can finally call him the 50-year-old Dubliner. But this is an enormous game. I was over in Portugal and I saw how the Ireland team played that night. And if I saw that game when I was 9-10 years old, I'd be hooked for life. If I saw that Irish performance, I'd be hooked on this team and these players and Adamida and all the lads for life, because of what they've done in the last few weeks. So there's dads, there's mothers and parents looking at their kids going, okay, I got to bring them, I got to find a way of getting there. So again, it's the market, supply, demand.
Yeah, okay, 53106 if you want to get in touch about that or anything else. For the Saturday panel, we're going to look ahead to the November internationals in rugby and talk about the sports books that are being nominated for the Book of the Year for 2021. After the news on Off the Ball Saturday here on News Talk, it is Leicester 0, Arsenal 2 in the Premier League. Goals by Gabriel and Emile Smith-Rowe at the King Power Stadium. We're back after this. Back to Off the Ball Saturday on News Talk. John Duggan with you through until 5. You can text us 53106, tweet us at Off the Ball. We're back with the Saturday panel reviewing the sporting week just gone with Gavin Cummiskey, the soccer correspondent of the Irish Times, who's in studio with me. Presenter of Off the Bench, Cliona Foley, and the former Irish basketball team captain and coach, Timmy McCarthy. You can listen on News Talk, watch us on the Off the Ball digital and social channels for Periscope on Twitter, at Off the Ball, YouTube, on Facebook, and on the OTB Sports app. We were speaking about the great week for the women's team before 2 o'clock, and also ticket touting and legislation coming in. And the great Gavin Riley, presenter here on Sundays, has been in touch to say Ireland v Portugal was covered since 12:01 a.m. on Thursday morning, as is any match now in the Aviva in the future. The problem was that you have to apply for your event to be covered, and neither venue nor organiser did so in time. Gone from resale since. As Gavin Riley there on ticket touting. We had a listener as well texting in on 53106. All these supporters who can't get a ticket for the Portugal game and only want to bring their kids to see an Ireland game but can't get one. Where were they when you could get a kids ticket for Fiver versus Qatar? Well, Qatar was a sellout. Not so much fuss then. If you want to support your team, you've got to support them for every match, not just when Cristiano and Bruno are on show, says one of our texters. We also got the small matter of New Zealand coming to town in a couple of weeks, and you can get tickets for €125 they were on sale the other day for the top stand tickets. Such palpable relief for the rugby fraternity, the RFU, that they got full houses back. Japan, New Zealand and Argentina over the next few weeks. Timmy McCarthy, what are you looking to see from Ireland now for these November internationals coming up?
I'm actually not sure, John. I'm sort of a bit flat about this series for the first time in a long time, even though the All Blacks are coming and they always excite me when they come to town. But I'm just not seeing any adventure in Andy Farrell. You know, I just think he's picking the same old. I mean, Zebo's back, okay, which is somebody that should never have been out of the squad in my view. But I'm just not sure where we're going at the moment. You know, I just think that we just seem to be going on the same journey, and I'm not clear where he's taking us, and that's really a concern for me because we have a lot of talent strewn throughout this squad. We're still depending on Johnny Sexton out half. I just think that's a real risk for us, you know, for thinking the next World Cup. I think Sexton's age would be a factor at that point. Now his fitness has been in question for a number of years, obviously, right? His talent is never in question. So what am I looking for? I'm looking for some hope, I suppose, and some performances that say we're doing something different than we've been doing in the past. But right now, I'm not looking forward to any great anticipation, sadly.
Any personality you'd like to see in there, Timmy?
Well, I think Jack Carty has had a phenomenal, number of months.
And he's not going to be involved.
Yeah, and I know he's been there before, and there's been question marks about him. But I'm a great believer in you pick players in form. I've always felt in any team I've coached or any team I've played with, pick the players who are in form. And right now, to me, he's the best out half in the country, and he's not even in the panel. And there's a big question mark about that in my view.
Cliona, what are you looking forward to seeing, players-wise, style-wise, from Ireland over the next few weeks? Are you feeling the same way as Timmy?
No, I'm dying to see them. I think, look, at part of the problem for the current manager is that he hasn't had enough time with them because of COVID. He did get the team at a bad time in terms of everything that's happened, and he's missed 2 summer tours. So I'm actually looking forward to seeing what they're going to do. I'm really looking forward to seeing, a proper, if you like, a game that has more, I suppose, more interest against Japan again, to see how Japan are as well. But what I'd really like to see, I suppose, is if you're going to pick players like Kieran Frawley or Dan Sheehan and people, then let's play them. Harry Byrne has had very little time with Leinster. Let's play him. What frustrates me is when you see friendly matches, so-called friendly matches, and they have brought new players in and they don't use them. That drives me crazy, and it's one of the criticisms I'd have maybe of Vera Pauw as well, is she doesn't run her bench very much, and I particularly don't understand it when you have friendly matches, so-called friendlies, but you have this problem from the RFU. Gavin will talk about it, where they need to get back on a winning foot, and they need to get probably back on a winning foot ahead of the Six Nations, which is their big money maker. So it's probably a difficult thing, but I'd really like to see him using somebody like Frawley, and I'd really like to see some sort of adventure, and maybe use them as, that attacking centre that we've been lacking, and that second playmaker that we've been lacking, because that's the way world rugby is going.
Japan and Argentina, though, that's the opportunity, Cliona, for those players to come in.
It
Whatever
is.
with the All Blacks game, you play your best team against the All Blacks, that's fair enough, but these other games...
Yeah, and like, you know, the offloading, which, you know, Japan delighted us all with at the World Cup. Again, that's what I'd like to see. I'd like to see Ireland becoming an offloading team. The stats for offloading, Gavin will know them more than I do, but I know they weren't great last year, and that was a big problem for us. And you know, if that's the way the game has gone, and also if that's the way you avoid injury, you know, this bish bash bosh up the middle. For me, you know, we've had so many players injured in recent years, you know, and the game is so physically demanding now. Then surely, you know, to try and get an offloading game well. And the other thing, I suppose, is not to be giving up stupid tries, which we still have a bit of a tendency to do. So it'll be interesting to see how, you know, because you're looking for flair, but you're also looking for, you know, defensive dependability, and I suppose they're two different things to marry. But I would like to see some of these new players, and I'd particularly like to see Frawley. I think Gavin Coombs is a really interesting player. I think it's really interesting that he's a first cousin of the Donovan brothers and from Skib. You know, isn't it interesting how genes and determine, you know, some of your future, maybe in terms of sport, and how you can just inherit certain things and then make the best of them. But I would like to see that. And I have to say, with Timmy, I'm the same. Jack Carty, I don't understand why he's not there.
What positions are up for grabs here?
I'd have isn't up for grabs, because nobody has proved that. If you just watch the games in detail, nobody has proved that they're good enough to remove Sexton from the position.
We just need to forget about Sexton's age.
She's just the best out half. Like Jack Carty has a strong case to be in ahead of Harry Byrne, because Harry Byrne hasn't played a lot of rugby. But they've been investing in Harry Byrne now for 2 years as effectively the guy who could get in and become the permanent 10, even ahead of Carberry, because Carberry's form has fallen off the cliff, and he is
bad injuries.
Joey Carberry is trading on reputation, and he's coming back from an injury that looked like it was going to really just like destroy his career. So it's soft back with him. Munster are playing him. Like, there was an argument that he shouldn't be nailed down as the Munster 10, but I said, when you take it all, I don't think Jack Carty's done enough. I think he's been exceptional in 1 or 2 games. I thought he actually was very good. He outplayed Carberry in that match, but I'd say he's the third best out half. Sexton is this is not great. It's not a good reflection on Irish rugby that Harry Byrne or Joey Carberry hasn't, or Jack Carty had his chances, and you know, he's a much better player now than he was in
the Japan game.
Yeah, like, you can't get blamed for it entirely, but yeah,
that seems to be a little bit of a hook that maybe is keeping him out of the.
I thought he was excellent for the first 30 minutes in that Japan game in 2019, and then I thought he was a major problem thereafter, you know. But that's not why he's out. Timmy has a valid point, and Cliona makes a point that he should be possibly in the squad, but they're investing in Harry Byrne and Joey Carberry long term, you know, and I think they're better players long term, medium term.
They have to stay fit, Gavin. That's the problem, isn't it?
Yeah, they do, and they are both injury. All 3 out halves are injury prone, but it's still Sexton's the best player Ireland have. Arguably, he runs the show. I actually do think it's quite a progressive squad, though. If you go into it, Balcombe, Hume, Nathan Doak, Dan Sheehan, Gavin Coombs, and that's the future of Irish rugby right there. Now, the thing is, though, how do you put Gavin Coombs, brilliant player, how do you put him in ahead of Conan, the Lions starting number 8, and Caelan Doris, who I think would have been the Lions starting number 8 if he hadn't had concussive issues? So those two are slightly better than them, but I'd love to see a back row of the 3 of them, but then what are you going to do?
Maybe they're mapping out for the World Cup 2 years.
What are you going to do, not pick Van der Flyer? I think all 4 of them are the key men going forward. That's the 4 Irish back rowers. Peter O'Mahony obviously still has a fighting chance as ever, but again, like I've just mentioned, Hume, Balcombe, Doak and Sheehan. I think Balcombe can be the standout star. Maybe if he stays fit throughout November, I think he might just nail it down. His pace, his athleticism might just shine through. Nathan Doak, yeah, 100%, get him in there. He's got all the tools to step up, but what do we do, discard Conor Murray, you know? It's the same thing when you see a form guy, but you can't just remove like the best scrum half Ireland's ever had. Hume, again, Ulster have produced 3 really special players, backs now, indeed, Balcombe, Hume and Doak. I think Hume will come through, but again, you have to remove who's there. And Andy Farrell was going on about it this week. He was like, the big boys are back, and if you can't physically cope with those guys at training, you don't get picked. That's why I normally give the benefit of the doubt to they see what they see is, oh, okay, like people were clamouring for Harry Byrne a year ago, okay, clamouring saying, this guy, why is he not in? He should be fast tracked. But the simple facts of the matter were his big brother and Sexton were playing better rugby than him. They were more reliable than him, and if your out half's not completely reliable, completely trustworthy, you're just on hiding to nothing.
And it comes down to decision making. Like they can see lots and lots and lots in training, but what it really comes down to is their decision making in big games, isn't it? And that's the thing that none of them are proving yet. And that's
you're right, Cliona. Like Andy Farrell and Mike Catt are not completely proven as in that regard yet. That's why November is important. I think, and again, we had you were dead right about Vera Pugh not making the decisions on the line, but I think Andy Farrell and Mike Catt's reputation as national coaches, in these big jobs, will be shaped by their team selections in November. I've no doubt about that. But I do think it's a progressive squad. I do think there's going to be there's the next wave of talent is there. But again, like Dan Sheehan looks like he has the potential to be a world class hooker. But what are we going to do? Discard Ronan Kelleher? There's definitely room for both of them.
It always strikes me. Go on, Cliona.
Well, that's what we want. We want competition for those places. Do you know what I mean? That's what's going to keep people sharp and keep them at the level they need to be at now. So, it is brilliant that we've so much competition in the pack, I think, for places, particularly the second row and the back row. But I don't think there's a lot of injuries again in the centre. And again, where's the succession planning, if you like, for me? I just don't see as much talent there. That's why I'd love to see, as I said, somebody like Kieran Frawley, who I think has played 10 and played 15 and is versatile and is a big guy. I'd love to see him get a chance. But again, he's very little match experience, even I think with Leinster starting, hasn't he?
Yeah, they've been bringing him through. He had a bad injury a year ago, but I think Frawley and Hume are the succession planning, because Henshaw's injured and Ringrose is injury prone. I think they're the next two up, and from what I've seen in snippets this season, it looks like they're ready to come through, but you still have to remove the incumbents. I think you're right about Frawley, though. I think it's worth possibly looking at against Japan, but I'd be more leaning towards a Doak, Sheehan, Coombs off the bench against Japan as a side of the next step in the evolution of Andy Farrell's Ireland.
John, just to develop the point about Andy Farrell's Ireland, as a former international coach, one of the challenges I would see for Farrell going into this is these are friendlies, okay, but they're not seen as friendlies. They're seen as big and very important tests. So the challenge as a coach is, do you say, okay, I'm going to take the Japan game and the Argentinian game and test out players and test out, the new players? But world ranking points will be important. Our performances, do we put our best team out only for the All Blacks? Are we trying to get a team ready for the Six Nations, or are we getting a team ready for the next World Cup? So it's a very difficult dilemma. I remember being in that situation. My philosophy was always in that situation, in friendly games, even though they're against other countries, treat them as friendlies. They're friendly games for us to try out systems, to try out, in my sport, basketball, defensive systems, offensive systems, and see can players step up at that level. Because one of these that I found playing international level is that it's a different step up. And many people who talk about it have never been in that situation. It's a real step up. So going from Munster to play for Ireland is a huge step up. And you have to decide as a coach, and you have to have the courage as a coach. Am I going to use these 3 test games as a way to get us ready for the Six Nations and find out who potentially could be talent for the next World Cup? Or am I going to take these 3 games to win these 3 games? Because it's not the same thing. You might end up winning the games or losing the games, but I just would like to know what the philosophy is around this series.
I think,
Andy Farrell's perspective.
Timmy, I think the stakes are too high to treat them like friendlies. For starters, again, the Viva Stadium literally for the next 10 years has to sell out every single game to break even, so losing just affects tickets.
So there's no room for experimentation anymore.
There never really has been in Test rugby, there's an odd game, the risk of experimenting against a Japan and then going in cold to New Zealand is extremely dangerous. Again, you mentioned it, if you lose to Argentina, you're putting yourself in really perilous position on rankings, and rankings have a huge knock-on effect. But also, I totally agree with you on basketball 100% and most other sports, but when it comes to rugby, if you put the guy in who you're not sure maybe he's ready for Test rugby, he'll get exposed. You have to kind of have a certain level of certainty, and it has to be from what he's doing in his provincial jersey, and it has to be then what he's doing when they put them in severe situations in training, which is not ideal, but I think it carries more weight in rugby than, for example, basketball, football, whatever.
I've often felt... Go on, Timmy.
Yeah, just to develop that point, Gavin, in that, then it's very difficult. It's very difficult. You talked about Balcom earlier as a real potential star, and Hume as another star. So unless you put them in, it's very difficult to see can they perform at the level, because with respect, playing for their provinces is not the same thing. It's not the same thing. You made a very good point earlier, which I agree with, is that the coaches see what goes on in practice every day. We don't see that. We see the outside situation. So they will see how they perform against their peers in practice. But ultimately, you find out whether somebody can play at the highest level in any sport when you put them in at the highest level. That's the risk. And the problem is, for the in rugby situation, because of the structure of the importance of this series from a point of view ranking and performance, it's a really difficult one. So I have sympathy for Farrell on this particular point. It's something that is, we won't solve for today. But the question is, are we building for the Six Nations? Are we building for the World Cup? And are we just building for these tests coming up?
I think you build by building a winning team.
We've never got it right though with the World Cup. Never.
Yeah. We haven't.
34 years.
Do you think we're going to get it right the next time?
Well, it's not with the draw the way it looks.
We're never going to get it right because the Six Nations is the cash cow for the IRFU, and so that's the overwhelming.
If we change things though, if you just sacrificed, would it make any difference to the World Cup?
Too big a financial sacrifice, because then the whole system is based on packing the Aviva Stadium. You pay wages via it. That's why Philip Brown was so out in front centre during the pandemic, saying if the government don't back us, this whole house of cards will crumble. It's based on bums on seats, so it's based on performance. And there's a couple of ways of looking at it, right? Eddie O'Sullivan or Eddie Jones is England. I point a lot of people to Owen Slott's piece in the Times today, which is searingly critical of how he treats people. But he takes enormous risks and flips over his staff and changes players if he doesn't like. But England have this massive playing pool where they can pick from. New Zealand's attitude is slightly different. Is they go, we're the All Blacks. It's like LeBron James playing for the Lakers. We have to perform every night. People come to see this. We can't lessen the brand by trialing people unless we're playing a team that's way off the mark. So if they want to test people in the international arena, go down a lower level. But we've seen before when you try with a Georgia, it doesn't really work. I think it's just the way Test rugby works is you have to go full out. But having said that, though, I think Farrell realises that he has to see if Carberry or Byrne can come in. I'm sure they're going to start one of the three test matches. Whoever's the second best out half in the minds of the Irish coaches is going to start one of these three tests. It would be madness not to, because again, although Sexton is easily the best out half in the country still, I don't think he's going to make it to the next World Cup.
53106. Terrible punditry. Friendly matches. Cop on. 3 top-class opponents. There are no friendlies in Test rugby, says Richard Monaghan. New Zealand game 165 for premium level ticket. Also, everybody talking about blooming new players. And then the next breath, say we welcome Zebo back. Will he be there for the next World Cup, says one of our texters. And can you ask Timmy about Basketball Ireland and vaccination around juvenile players under 18s, Timmy? What's the situation there, Timmy? Do you know at the moment?
Yeah, I do, because my brother's secretary of the Cork County Board and rang me last night in a rant. In a real rant, which I didn't really need on a Friday night. But basically, they have a big tournament on in Cork this weekend, and the rules around underage is that unless everyone is vaccinated, they cannot go into the arena. Yet, so here's the situation that is crazy. So you could have 2 Super League teams playing tonight. Okay, or today, this afternoon, and Gavin and myself will be coaching the 2 Super League teams. And nobody will ask us to be vaccinated. Nobody will ask any of the players to be vaccinated, and the people, so they'll go and we'll coach the teams. And then Gavin and myself tonight are coaching 215 teams, and we're not vaccinated, and we can't go and coach the teams. No, that is illogical in my view. So it's a real problem. And a number of teams had to pull out of the tournament in Cork yesterday for the tournament starting today and played over the weekend because of that ruling.
And is there any kind of resolution you can get?
Well, I suppose the authorities would say the resolution is for people to get vaccinated, but that's individuals' choices from that point of view. I just don't see the logic, though, of saying that an adult, you can go to an adult game or a Super League game, Gavin and myself as the 2 coaches, if we're not vaccinated, and then you can't go to a juvenile game if you're not vaccinated. So they should have one rule for all. Whatever the rule is, it should be the rule for all in sport. They shouldn't distinguish between the underage sport, in my view, and the Super League sport.
Sounds like a question for the new CEO, Timmy.
Yeah, and I think it's an exciting appointment. Obviously, it was unfortunate in the circumstances of the previous CEO, but it's an exciting appointment. I mean, he'll bring a different lens into basketball. And, basketball, Cliona was a reporter in the 80s in what was called the glory time of Irish basketball. From a crowd point of view, two Americans, it was great. Rasmus has a moment in time, really, or a moment in a decade. But I think that he has a real opportunity to do something significant for the new generation of basketball players.
We have sports books time, I suppose, of the year. We're getting to November on Monday, and then we're buying books for people at Christmas, and it's an easy one to kind of sort out. for somebody not sure that what you want to buy for them when you know they're a sports fan. So there's On Post Book Awards, the Sports Book of the Year Award, sponsored by Eastern Association with Virgin Media's Ireland AM. Champagne Football won it last year. So what have we got on the shortlist for this? Well, Crossing the Line, Willie Anderson's autobiography in conjunction with the Sunday Independent rugby correspondent Brendan Fanning. Devotion, Mickey Hart's book with Brendan Coffey. Dark Blue, Shane Carthy, the Dublin footballer's book. Aidan O'Mahony's book, Unbroken. Tommy Conlon and Keith Earl's book, Fight or Flight, that's just come out. A Nation Holds Its Breath, George Hamilton on his life and career. And then we also have William Hill nominations. So we got This Is Your Everest, co-authored by the Limerick journalist Tom English, about the 1997 Lions tour of South Africa. We've got boxing writer Trish Dixon nominated for Damage. Michael Holding, the cricketer, on the history of racism in sport and Why We Kneel, How We Rise. Rob Burrows, Too Many Reasons to Live, detailing his ongoing battle with motor neuron disease. Little Wonder by Sasha Abramsky, telling the story of Lottie Dodd. And we also have Ed Caesar's The Moth in the Mountain, about World War I veteran Morris Wilson's dreams of climbing Mount Everest. I'm very ashamed to say, I suppose maybe that's a good or a bad thing, I haven't read any of these books yet. Cliona, have you picked up anything through the pandemic that you might want to recommend, or have you read any of those books, or is there anything that you can point to?
Yeah, there's a couple of really interesting things here. It's the second year in a row, actually, that a non-soccer book has not, or a soccer book hasn't featured in the William Hill, which would cause some controversy. I thought Michael Calvin's Whose Game Is It Anyway would make that this year. I'm surprised it hasn't, so that's obviously a reflection of the quality. And the William Hill tends to be, if you notice the difference, William Hill tends to be, in the last few years, they're not autobiographies. They're about much more than that, which I love in a sports book. And I haven't read any of them yet, but I'm really interested in Damage, the book by Trish Dixon, the book about boxing and CTE and head injuries. I think that looks really interesting. And the Lottie Dodd one as well. She won the first Irish tennis championships. She was the first Irish, I think she was the first woman to win the Irish Ireland tennis championships, or she certainly won in Fitzwilliam. She won the Irish championships. She was this famous character in the 1800s. She played everything, so that one should be really interesting. Of the Irish ones, I've read Shane Carthy's, and that's a great book. I really recommend that. I'm really interested in the Keith Earls one, but I think the problem with the autobiographies now is that we see we get so many clips of them, and we hear so much about them before we nearly read them. Sometimes that's one of the problems. But I think the Keith Earls one obviously looks really interesting and is written with Tommy Conlon, who's brilliant. And then I'm really interested in Mickey Hart's one as well, because it's the third book really that Mickey Hart will feature in, but it's a very different book, and Brendan Coffey is a really, really good writer. So I think I'll get that one, because as I said, I'm not usually, it's not necessarily about football, so I think I'll be interested in that one. I've read a couple of good ones, and there's one I'd recommend if anybody's.
We'll never know.
William Hill.
Sorry, Cliona, you just broke up there for a second.
That is called, am I still with you?
Yeah, you're still with us now. Yeah, the ones you've read yourself? I think we lost Cliona there for the moment. Cliona Foley back in a moment. Just to let you know, Arsenal have won, folks, 2-0 away to Leicester City. That's a big win. Arsenal now unbeaten in 9 games in all competitions. Gabriel, the defender, headed in from a corner early on, and then Emile Smith-Rowe with the second goal. So Arsenal going places under Mikel Arteta, and they've sorted things out. They've got a shape to their team, and they've won today in the Premier League to continue that out unbeaten run. Timmy McCarthy, have you read any of those books that I read out there, or is there anything you really picked up in lockdown when we do it all at a time that you might point us in the direction of?
So I read a Shane Carthy book, and I thought it was an excellent book. But the two books that really sort of interest me, that I'll pick up over the next couple of weeks, I'm going to buy Willie Anderson's book, because I just think that's a fascinating story. I just think the fact of the challenges that are highlighted in the preview. So that's one I'm going to pick up. And I'm going to pick George Hamilton up, because as a commentator of sports and RT, I just think it's interesting to see, from his lens, just his journey from that point of view. So they'll be the two that I'll pick up, for two completely different reasons in that sense. I mean, the other one, I suppose, that interests me, and I think my daughter's buying as a present, which I'm not supposed to know about, is the Aidan O'Mahony book. So I will be reading that, because my daughter's buying that for me as my Christmas present.
Cliona, you're back.
Yeah, sorry, John. The old gremlins got me here. Yeah, the book I was talking about is a book called Game On. It's called by Sue Antis, who would be very well known in England as a if you like, a promoter of women's sport. And she's written a book about the rise of women's sport. She calls it The Unstoppable Rise of Women's Sport. I wouldn't necessarily agree with her, but it's very comprehensive and has a lot of really good stuff in it. So that's well worth for anybody who's interested in that.
Gavin,
John, just one final point. One of the best sports book I've ever read, and we were talking about rugby early on, is a book called Legacy around the All Blacks. And I just think it gives the entire philosophy about what they're about, what it means to play for the All Blacks. It talks about leadership, it talks about being a teammate. That's the best sports book I've ever read.
Ever?
Legacy. Ever. And
is it recent, Timmy?
Well, I read it in the last 2 years, so it's about maybe 2 or 3 years old, but phenomenal book, Legacy. It tells basically what it means to be an All Black, and it tells about one of the great examples. It talks about when Dan Carter and Richie McCaw were the two leading players in the world. One was World Player of the Year 1 year, and one was, after they played Wales in a test game, these two guys were assigned the job of cleaning up the dressing room. You think of that of part of humility of players at the top level. I just thought to myself, it taught an awful lot about. They wanted no guys, who had BS in their team. They wanted real people who were honest, hard-working. I always love people who are hard-working first. Give me a hard-working player first. Okay, you made a point earlier, Gavin, about the women's team, about they're not hard-working. Give me an honest player first, okay? Because we can develop skills. We can develop, okay? And then give me somebody who's honest and hard-working with talent. And then you have a real, complete player in my view.
Keith Earls, you just described, I think, yeah.
Yeah, I'm just stunned, Timmy, that you were able to pick out one, because it's like songs and films for me. I can never pick one greatest sports book. I think of A Rough Ride and Only a Game up there at the top, but I can never pick one.
The reason I picked one, John, is that
I like it at all. I read the All Black one and I thought it was like a PR job in some ways for me. It was just a bit holier than thou and a bit,
I'm
I don't know.
Up the studio before I leave.
That's fascinating.
Okay, so
difference of opinion.
Yeah, so just for me, John, as I said, everything I would want in a team, okay, and even if whatever way it was put out, everything I'd want in a team was summarised in that book for me.
Fair enough.
Gavin, have you read any of these books that are on that list?
No, but after years of torture from these quick flipped rugby books, it looks like we've finally got two really good ones. Many years of poor sports rugby autobiographies. Keith Earls with Tommy Conlon. Keith Earls asked the rugby reporters, and I'll tell you, he is just really good. Even in group settings, even in those 15-minute group settings, Keith Earls. There was an interview he gave on the eve of the 2015 World Cup, and it was like 10 of us around him in a hotel cafe, and it was just quality. He's a guy, he's quite introspective. I just have a lot of time for him as a person. A rare talent who's battled through so much more than we even knew, as it turns out, from the Late Late appearance. And just from knowing how good an interviewer he is and how good a talker he is, him and Tommy Conlon spending a couple of months together, I don't see how this is not going to be a really, really good, well written read. And also Brent Fanning, again, I haven't got round to it because he didn't send me a free copy, but his work with Willie Anderson. Brent did a great book called From There to Here, which really captured Irish rugby's move from amateur to professionalism about 10 years ago. And it looks like he spent a lot of time, I think, with Willie Anderson throughout the pandemic, and it looks like they've really, I don't think it's as much a story about a man's life as it is about a very interesting man's life as it is about a rugby player, so I'll be probably buying that for the dad for Christmas. The Myler, Keith Duggan's done a good piece in the Irish Times today.
And he's on after 3 o'clock, David Myler. We'll talk about a family memoir.
Book, which is kind of a hurling book, though, really, or we don't know what it is.
I just think it's about family.
Yeah, the Mylers. Yeah, I'll be getting a hold of that definitely. Yeah.
And would you like, Timmy, have the best ever sports book you read close to an answer to?
Me? Yeah. The best one I've ever read. That changes all the time. Yeah, it is like my. What's your favourite film? It changes all the time. It's Children of Men at the moment, I'd say, my favourite film. But the favourite book, J.R. Mooringer had a great influence on me. Like that, everyone goes on about the Agassi book, Open, but it actually opened me up to him. And I went
as a writer.
I ended up reading everything he's written afterwards. Especially The Tender Bar. But it's a book that kind of makes you go down a rabbit hole. Sports books, God, it's been a while. I haven't read sports books for ages, so I've got back in time. You said a nice one about John Wilson on Brian Clough. After saying that, I'm going to go find it.
I'm reading it at the moment. It's Nobody Ever Says Thank You, and I've done the whole Clough thing. I did Duncan Hamilton's book, and Clough's one it himself. But this is a really in-depth, meaty analysis of Clough and Taylor.
Did you read The Damned United?
Yeah, I did. That's an amazing book. I don't think it's a book of fact. Obviously, it's not
it's
a book.
fantastic, though.
But it's an amazingly penned book. I didn't do the Shankly one, but The Damned United is absolutely fantastic. You can't put it down. Actually, would completely agree with you. Cliona, is the one for all time for you? I think Cliona, we were having issues with our line there, but I'd like to thank Cliona and Timmy. Timmy, best of luck. We'll talk to you soon.
Talk to you soon, John. Good to see you. Nice to meet you, Gav.
Yeah, you too, Timmy. Well done.
And Gavin, you survived your hour in here in the OTB studio.
Yeah, it was my pleasure. Thanks very much for having me.
All right, Gavin Cummiskey of the Irish Times soccer correspondent, Timmy McCarthy and Cliona Foley. On the Saturday panel, if you just missed any of it, sports books, ticket touting, the Irish rugby prospects for the November internationals, and the great performance of the women's team in that match in Finland during the week was what we had on offer. We're going to have David Myler, Dan McDonnell and Johnny Ward between 3 and 5 to talk about football. Arsenal have beaten Leicester 2-0 to go 5th in the Premier League. We're back after this.
Off the ball on News Talk.